In 2009, the region around the small surf town of Elands Bay on South Africa's west coast was renowned for its strong waves and untamed beauty. This section of the coast has long attracted thrill seekers from all over the world. It is steeped in local surfing legend. Over the years, the waters had also gained a reputation for something more ominous: an increasing number of shark sightings, particularly the elusive and dangerous tiger shark. Nestled between the roaring Atlantic and the jagged cliffs was the small town. Before turning into a center for surfers, it was a fishing village. Few people in the area dared to go into the water at night despite their respect for the beauty and danger of the ocean. Darker, colder, and less predictable at night, the sea was a completely different animal. A nighttime surfing expedition, however, was too alluring for a group of 4 surfers to turn down. Group leader Kairos McTavish was an accomplished surfer in his mid-30s, who loved to push the boundaries. There were rumors of bioluminescent plankton that, in the right circumstances, could light up the waves. And this night with no moon in the sky seemed ideal for an adventure along these lines. Beside him were his 2 friends, Dace Venter and Juno Eckhart, who were experienced surfers, and his younger brother, Oren McTavish. The group believed they were well prepared. They affixed glow sticks and headlamps to their wetsuits for better visibility in the pitch-black waters. The waves beneath them shimmered with an eerie glow as they paddled out into the dark sea, the bioluminescence illuminating every wave, crash, and ripple. It seemed unearthly, even surreal. They were the only ones on the water that night, and part of the excitement came from being alone. A big tiger shark had been lurking in the nearby waters, but the surfers were unaware of it. Attracted by the glistening plankton and the peculiar movements overhead, the predator had been hiding in the lower depths, behaving with the stealth and accuracy of a top hunter. Because of their propensity for opportunistic feeding, tiger sharks posed a particular threat at night, when their ambush tactics worked best. The dark ocean echoed with the laughter and joyful whoops of surfers catching wave after wave. The danger had been creeping closer with each set of waves, but they were unaware of it. When Dace felt something brush against his leg while paddling back out after riding a wave, that was the first indication that something was wrong. Gazing into the dark depths, he halted while treading water and shone his headlamp. There was nothing he saw. He dismissed it, figuring it was driftwood or seaweed, and continued. The tiger shark, though, was getting closer. The sudden flailing in the water happened very quickly. Something strong knocked Juno off her board, and she had been farther out than the others. She let out a muffled shout. For a few terrifying seconds, she vanished beneath the waves. Her leg was bleeding, and her board was gone when she surfaced, struggling to breathe. When the others heard her screams, they frantically paddled their boards in her direction. Kairos was the first to approach, taking her by the arm and quickly pulling her onto his board. An uneven cut on her calf was gushing blood. The water around them was glowing strangely pale due to the glow sticks on their wetsuits. And that's when they noticed it. The distinct outline of a tiger shark circling below the surface. Panic ensued. A few meters distant, Oren yelled at the others to head straight for the shore. Paddling back as quickly as they could was their only chance. The shark still needed to be finished. With enough force to throw Dace off balance, it lunged again towards his board's underside. With his heart thumping fiercely in his chest, he hurried to get back on. The others were advised to remain near Kairos, struggling to hold on to his board. In an attempt to dissuade the predator, they gathered tightly together. Nevertheless, the shark persisted in its streamlined form, slicing through the water incredibly. It made a second pass but broke the surface with its dorsal fin this time. The group paddled together for an eternity, their arms burning from the effort. The coastline seemed unfathomably far away, barely discernible in the distance. Even though she was in agony and losing blood, Juno tightly gripped Kairos's board as he pushed forward with all of his might. They were about to believe the shark would attack again when it abruptly turned and vanished into the darkness. They couldn't tell if it was no longer interested or had become sidetracked by something else. Nevertheless, they didn't pause to inquire. They paddled until their board struck the shallow sandbar, at which point they stumbled, trembling and exhausted, onto the beach. After returning to shore safely, they immediately made a help call. After being brought to a local hospital, Juno had her wound sutured. The local authorities investigated the attack, but tiger sharks had long been known to pose a threat. particularly in the waters near the Western Cape. The event did little more than fuel the continuing discussion about the necessity of tighter safety regulations and nighttime water activities. Kairos, Orondace, and Juno were all deeply affected by the experience. Even though they had barely avoided danger, the thrill of night surfing had become less exciting. Even though they had survived, the ocean had reminded them that it was its own master, and that no amount of planning could completely ensure safety in its depths. Following the attack, scientists kept tracking the movements of tiger sharks along the coast, and local surf schools banned night surfing entirely. To the McTavish brothers and their friends, the water would always be a place of quiet respect and caution. For others, it remained a place of beauty and adventure. The vast expanse of the Arctic spread out in a white wilderness, a landscape so untouched and pristine that it seemed otherworldly. Here, on a remote island encased in ice and snow, Alex, a dedicated documentary filmmaker, had set up his base camp. His mission was to capture the elusive and intimate moments of a colony of seals during mating season. This endeavor promised rare and breathtaking footage. With his camera gear meticulously checked and survival equipment stowed away, Alex embarked on what he hoped would be a career-defining project. The seals were gathered on a vast stretch of frozen shoreline, their slick bodies contrasting sharply against the snow-covered ground. Few humans had ever witnessed this sight firsthand. The seals were busy with ritualistic displays and vocalizations, oblivious to the biting cold and howling winds that swept across the ice. Alex, bundled in layers of thermal gear, carefully navigated the treacherous terrain, his camera capturing the intricate dance of nature. Days passed in a blur of icy winds and breathtaking scenes. Alex became a silent observer, blending into the landscape, his presence barely noted by the seals. The camera's lens allowed him to see the world from a perspective few ever experienced, capturing the raw beauty and harsh realities of life in the Arctic. He documented the nurturing bond between mothers and their pups, the playful antics of younger seals, and the majestic yet brutal battles between males vying for dominance. One frigid morning, as the pale sun barely peeked over the horizon, Alex spotted a massive male seal that seemed to command the attention of the entire colony. This alpha male was an awe-inspiring figure with battle scars etched into his thick hide. Alex knew that getting footage of this dominant seal would be a highlight of his documentary. He approached cautiously, mindful of the animal's territorial nature. Sensing an unfamiliar presence, the alpha male lifted its head and locked eyes with Alex. The filmmaker's heart pounded as he continued to film, inching closer for a better shot. He knew the risks, but was driven by the promise of capturing something extraordinary. Suddenly the seal bellowed, a deep resonant sound that echoed across the ice. It was a warning, clear and unmistakable. Before Alex could react, the massive seal charged, its bulk moving slowly across the frozen ground. Alex's instinct for self-preservation kicked in. He swung his camera, hoping to deter the animal. The seal's attack was relentless, and the camera equipment offered little protection. Alex stumbled, falling hard onto the ice. Pain shot through his leg where the seal's powerful jaws had clamped down, tearing through his thick clothing. Desperation surged through him as he used his tripod to fend off the aggressive seal, each movement a struggle against the searing pain and rising panic. He knew he had to get away, to put distance between himself and the enraged animal. With great effort, he scrambled to his feet, using the tripod to keep the seal at bay as he backed away slowly. The alpha male eventually relented, returning to its territory, but the damage was done. Alex's leg throbbed with pain, the cold seeping into his bones through the torn fabric. The journey back to camp was an agonizing test of endurance and willpower. The extreme cold gnawed at him, sapping his strength and clarity. Though designed for the harsh conditions, his survival gear offered little solace against the pain radiating from his leg. Each step was a battle, his breath forming vapor clouds in the frigid air. Navigating the icy landscape was treacherous. The once familiar terrain seemed like a labyrinth, and each snowdrift and ice formation was a potential hazard. Alex relied on his survival skills, honed over years of filming in extreme environments. The sky darkened, the brief Arctic day giving way to a long, frigid night. Alex knew that stopping was not an option. If he paused, the cold would claim him. He pressed on, his mind focused on reaching his camp. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Alex spotted the outline of his base camp. Relief flooded through him, giving him a final burst of energy. He staggered into the camp, collapsing near his tent. With trembling hands, he unpacked his first aid kit and began treating his wounds. The bite marks were deep, and infection was a real risk in the harsh conditions. He cleaned the wounds as best he could, applying antiseptic and bandages. The pain was relentless, but Alex knew he couldn't afford to rest. He needed to secure the camp against the cold and ensure he had enough supplies to last until help could arrive. He activated his emergency beacon, a signal that would alert the nearest rescue station to his predicament. The next few days were a blur of pain and cold. Alex rationed his food and water, careful not to overexert himself. As he waited, Alex reflected on the events that had brought him to this point. The attack had been a harsh reminder of the raw power of nature, of the thin line between observer and participant in the wild. He had always known the risks, but experiencing them firsthand was a sobering lesson. Yet despite the pain and fear, he deeply respected the alpha male seal. It had been defending its territory, following instincts honed over millennia of survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth. As Alex's strength waned and hope began to dim on the fifth day, he heard the distant hum of an approaching aircraft. The sound grew louder, cutting through the wind. He staggered out of his tent, waving a brightly colored fabric to signal his location. The rescue team descended their presence, a beacon of hope in the frozen wasteland. They quickly assessed his condition, their faces a mix of concern and determination. Alex was lifted into the helicopter. The cabin's warmth starkly contrasted with the biting cold outside. He looked over the vast Arctic landscape as they flew towards the nearest medical facility. The experience had been harrowing, but he had survived. His footage would tell the story of the seals, their fierce beauty, and the challenges they faced in a changing world. In the contemporary fishing community of Kashega, Alaska, the sea remained a source of livelihood and a constant threat. The men and women who worked these waters respected the ocean's power. Still, they relied on its bounty to sustain their families. It was a life of hard work and uncertainty, where each trip could bring either fortune or disaster. The first sign of trouble came quietly, almost unnoticed. A fishing boat failed to return one evening. The Coast Guard was alerted and a search was initiated. They found the boat adrift, its crew of 4 missing. The vessel showed signs of damage, as if it had been struck by something large and powerful. The community mourned the loss, but accidents were not uncommon in these dangerous waters, so they forgot about them quickly. However, it happened again. Another boat was found wrecked, its crew of 3 missing and later found dead. The pattern became impossible to ignore as more boats were discovered and destroyed, and their crews were gone. When the number of fishermen killed was counted, it was up to 17 in just 3 months. This sent waves of fear and grief through Kashega. Theories and rumors spread like wildfire. Some blamed rogue waves, others spoke of a curse, while a few whispered about a monstrous sea creature. Desperation grew, and the local authorities and Coast Guard could not provide answers. The town needed help, someone who could decipher the mystery behind the tragedies. Enter Dr. Claire Roberts, a renowned marine biologist specializing in oceanography and sea creatures' behavior. Her arrival in Kashega was met with both hope and skepticism. Claire's reputation preceded her. In the summer of 1992, Port Hardy, a small seaside town in British Columbia, was tucked away on the rocky northern tip of Vancouver Island. The city has long been a refuge for beachgoers, fishermen, and outdoor lovers due to its close-knit community and scenic beauty. The chilly Pacific waters, however, had a sinister reputation beneath their picturesque surface. Reports of shark sightings, especially of the great white variety, had been made periodically over the years. Despite this, the locals were rarely alarmed, dismissing the sightings as the result of fanciful stories told by fishermen or the sporadic appearance of a predator far from its typical hunting grounds. The kind of man who could make any gathering laugh was Sam Holloway, a beloved local. Sam, who was nearly 300 pounds in weight and 6 feet tall, had a personality that was as big as his size. He was always the first to joke around, and one could hear his deep laugh from the other side of the beach. Sam chose to partake in one of his favorite activities, a lazy float on the water on this particular day following a lengthy afternoon barbecue with friends. The scene was ideal. As families packed up their things and kids played in the shallow water, the beach was bathed in a warm glow from the low sun. Sam went to the shoreline after grabbing an inflatable air mattress from his truck and a bright blue and yellow raft that had seen a lot of use over the years. With his typical smile, he waved to a few friends occupied with cleaning up after the barbecue. The chilly sea nipped at his feet as he waded into the water and gingerly ascended onto the inflated mattress. A light breeze from the sea blew through the cool air. Sam relaxed, shut his eyes, and let the soft current draw him out. So the steady sound of the waves crashing against the mattress lulled him into a sound sleep. The tide was turning, but Sam didn't realize it. He was carried farther and farther from the shore by the water, as the afternoon turned to early evening due to the erratic currents in this area of Vancouver Island. The once welcoming beach was now just afar off on the horizon. Sam was still blissfully oblivious, snoring softly as his big body stretched out on the floating mattress. The sea became cold, and the surroundings beneath him altered as he moved farther out into the open waters. This region of the Pacific was renowned for its abundant marine life. Schools of fish, sea lions, and seals freely swam in the chilly depths. But where there was prey, there was also a predator. And the top predator in these waters was the great white shark. A dark silhouette slid silently beneath the surface miles from shore. When a large female great white, who was more than 15 feet long, sensed something else, she stopped pursuing a school of seals. She had been interested in Sam because of the vibrations coming from his mattress and his sporadic movements. Inquisitive but cautious, she was a predator. Sam was still half asleep when he stirred a little, but something wasn't right. As his floating mattress rocked softly, an odd feeling of unease started to seep into his thoughts. Squinting against the waning sunlight, he opened his eyes and blinked. It took him a moment to realize how far he had drifted and how little he could see of the far shore now. Even though panic hadn't yet struck, he could feel an increasing unease eating away at the edges of his awareness. And then it happened. When a sudden strong shock shook the mattress, Sam became terrified. His heart was racing in his chest as he sat up straight. For a brief instant, nothing moved. He glanced at the surrounding water, but all he could see were the soft, placid waves. Perhaps a fish or a piece of driftwood had brushed against the mattress, he told himself, trying to dispel the idea that it was all in his head. But he was hit by another powerful shock before he could calm down. Sam had to hold on to the edges of the mattress to prevent himself from falling into the water, because it was tilting dangerously. He saw it then, and a vast shadow moved just below the surface, slowly circling him. He felt his blood cool. Sam had never given the tales or rumors about sharks in these waters much thought. He began to panic now that he was confronted with the indisputable facts. His big frame made the mattress wobble dangerously as he frantically tried to paddle with his hands. It appeared that every motion disturbed the creature beneath him. No longer intrigued, the shark was aware of the presence above. It was in hunting mode now. This prominent, sluggish figure on the water's surface was prey in the predator's mind, just like a distressed fish or a stranded seal. As it approached, the water surface was broken by its dorsal fin. When Sam saw the fin slicing through the water a few feet away, his heart began to race. He paddled more forcefully but lacked coordination because his panic prevented him from thinking clearly. Already wobbly under his weight, the mattress abruptly swung to the side, sending Sam into the freezing water. There was silence for a short, horrifying instant. Sam was struggling to stay afloat when the shock of the cold water took his breath away. He was exposed and at risk when the inflatable mattress sank just out of reach. His movements were erratic and desperate as he thrashed in the water. When the shark sensed Sam's frantic movements, it struck with terrifying speed. With its strong jaws clamping down on Sam's leg, it rose from below. It was instantaneous and unfathomable. Sam screamed, but the sound was lost in the vast ocean surrounding him. There were still some beachgoers on the far shore who had noticed the disturbance. Although they could not do much, they could see Sam struggling in the water in the distance. Though it was too late, someone fled for assistance. The water surrounding Sam turned red in a matter of minutes. He was pulled beneath the surface by the shark, which was motivated by its instincts. His flailing slowed, and the sea became silent again. All that was left when rescuers arrived was the deflated mattress floating aimlessly in the water. The man with the contagious laugh and jokes, Sam Holloway, was no longer there. The shark had gone deep with him, never to be seen again. The tragedy rocked the small town of Port Hardy, and within days word of it had spread well beyond its boundaries. After being picked up by news outlets, the story of the 300-pound man who was attacked by a shark while sleeping on an inflatable mattress quickly went viral. Friends and family were left to deal with the unexpected loss, and the strange and terrible nature of the incident made their grief even worse. The tale would be recounted over and over for years, and Sam Holloway's last moments would serve as a terrifying reminder of the perils that could lurk beneath the surface of even the calmest waters. The choppy waters surrounding New Zealand's North Island had a special appeal in the late summer of 2013. Experienced surfers knew that the undiscovered surf spots were rewarding and challenging, especially those close to the remote coasts of the far North District. These waters offered something different from the crowded beaches of Mount Maunganui or Raglan, a pristine, unspoiled surfing experience amidst towering waves and strong winds. The ocean in this area has been experiencing minor changes, though many people were unaware of or disregarded this. Warmer subtropical waters had been mixed with colder southern ocean currents, upsetting the delicate balance of marine life. A sequence of incidents that left an indelible mark on sea researchers and surfers occurred in these isolated waters, particularly in Spirits Bay. Some old hands among the surfers gathered at Spirits Bay on that fateful day. Kanoa Drayton, a 34-year-old local celebrity whose name reverberated throughout the North Island's coastlines, led the group. Alone with him were Tain Taniwa Raukura, a former lifeguard with unrivaled underwater skills, and Moana Teague, a marine conservationist turned adrenaline addict. The three of them had headed north, searching for a more remote ocean area to escape the crowded areas to the south. Younger Australian surfers Lyle and Kai Sutherland joined them after hearing stories of unexplored waves in Spirits Bay. With the group paddling out into the blue expanse, breaking surf awoke the morning. The waves rose enormously like walls of water and then perfectly formed tubes. Spirits Bay was notorious for its erratic swells, which had brought these surfers to the area. They were dancing on top of the ocean, riding the waves' intense energy, not realizing how dangerous the area beneath the surface might be. They were unaware that a sizable group of dark-colored sharks, some measuring close to 3 meters, had approached the coast. Because of the shifting currents and warming waters, the sharks became more attracted to each other than they normally would have been. Normally, dusky sharks were not known to be hostile toward humans, but instinct and hunger had turned them into more dangerous creatures. It was unexpected for the species to travel this close to the northern beaches of New Zealand, even though marine biologists had recently noticed strange migrations among them. Kanoa initially sensed the unsettling shift in the water. Halfway through the ride, a fin slicing through the surface caught his attention. Its fin was too sharp, too deliberate, and at first he thought it was a dolphin, which is common in these waters. As he paddled back into the lineup, he saw another fin break the surface, then another. There was an issue. The initial assault happened quickly. Moving farther out, Moana felt a sharp, strong, and very definitely alive impact beneath her board. Her board overturned, and she briefly found herself underwater, lost in thought, as the icy water pulled her downward. She was a few meters from her board when she came to the surface, and she could see a dark silhouette of a shark circling below. Kanoa yelled at the others to return to land, but the sharks had already spread out, and it was too late. Tain, who was always a calm presence, led the charge and guided the group toward the safety of the sand. Despite their persistence, the sharks continued to dart between the surfers, their sleek bodies gliding at an alarming speed. The shark's tail pulled Lyle, the younger Australian, off his board. Panic set in as the group desperately paddled their boards, scraping the skin of the predators below. The sharks had moved back, vanishing as fast as they had appeared when they reached shallow water. Out of breath and shaky, the group staggered onto the beach. Moana was slightly injured when grazed by one of the shark's rough patches on her leg, but the damage was not as bad as it could have been. Though they were still alive, the ocean had made them aware of its danger and unpredictability. After word of the attack quickly spread, Dr. Keahi Hiraoka, a specialist in shark migration, led a team of marine biologists from the University of Auckland to Spirits Bay. Even though Dr. Hiraoka had been monitoring dusky shark movements for months, this incident was a concerning development. The sharks were moving around in their territory, probably due to the continuous temperature fluctuations in the ocean. It served as a sobering reminder of how quickly the equilibrium of marine ecosystems can change. Alarmed by the attack, local authorities warned surfers and swimmers to stay out of the water on all of the northern beaches of the North Island. The effort to tag and track the sharks was stepped up, and patrols were established. To avert further encounters, Dr. Hiraoka collaborated closely with Moana Teague and other conservationists to map the sharks' new migratory patterns. In the months following the attack, the surfers who had survived that day started to change. Formerly well known for his audacious water stunts, Kanoa Drayton became an ocean safety advocate, using his platform to spread the word about the perils of underestimating the ocean. Tane gave up competitive surfing to concentrate on lifeguard training and ocean education, while Moana returned to her marine conservation work with a fresh sense of purpose. As this was happening, scientists closely tracked the dusky sharks as they continued their migration. The event at Spirits Bay served as a warning about the precarious equilibrium that exists between land and sea, one that could collapse at any time. The ocean would never be the same for the surfers who had gazed upon the unadulterated force of nature. The peaceful fishing community of Kapaia was located on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. When local fisherman Kalani Mahalona set out on his little weathered boat, the sun's golden rays fell on the calm turquoise waters. He had been making a living from fishing for almost 30 years, and the village had become accustomed to his frequent visits. The rustle of palm trees and the hum of the ocean were more familiar than the bustle of the outside world in Kapa, where time seemed to pass more slowly. The village was primarily dependent on fishing and tourism, the latter of which brought in curious tourists, hoping to take in the unspoiled splendor of the Hawaiian coastlines. Kalani had been fishing in these waters without any problems for years. Attacks by sharks were even more uncommon than sightings. Kalani had never had any cause to be afraid of great white sharks, because they were uncommon in these tropical waters. However, something was different that morning. He felt a sense of unease as he cast his nets. The typically clear water appeared darker, as though something was hiding beneath it. The water erupted as Kalani was about to pull up his final catch of the day after hours had passed. The boat rocked violently before he could react as a huge shadow rose from the depths. Larger than any Kalani had ever envisioned, the great white shark crashed into the side of his ship. The creature struck in a rage, its jaws snapping with terrifying accuracy. Despite Kalani's struggles, the ocean quickly turned red. The very waters that the fisherman had known his entire life had claimed him, and he was no longer there. The shark had crushed him before leaving his lifeless body and disappeared into the deep. Kapa was shocked to learn of Kalani's passing. These waters had never seen a shark attack, so losing one of their own, particularly one with Kalani's level of experience, left a lasting wound. At first, the local authorities dismissed it as a single tragic incident, an unfortunate run-in with a rogue predator. However, the explanation didn't sit well with Daniel Mahalona Kalani's son. Daniel, a marine biologist who specialized in shark behavior, had been researching sharks for years. He had traveled across the Pacific for work, but he felt that the waters around Hawaii were safe for both people and sharks. From colder waters, great whites in particular hardly ever traveled this far. Daniel was determined to discover what it was that had brought this person here. Daniel started his investigation after his father's funeral and returned to Kapa. He talked to other fishermen who had been out on the water that day just like his father. The weeks before the attack, according to several, saw an abnormally high number of sharks nearer the coast. A few had even managed to catch a glimpse of big dark shapes beneath their boats. At that point, Daniel's suspicions began to grow. This type of shallow water was not the only place where sharks gathered, and not in such large quantities. The natural equilibrium was altered by something. Daniel made a startling discovery as he dug deeper. He discovered abandoned fishing gear, including hooks and lines intended for something much bigger than catching mahi-mahi or tuna. There were indications of illicit poaching on the gear similar to what is used by those involved in the shark fin trade. Poachers frequently used bait to entice sharks to kill them for their fins, and then discard the rest of the carcass. The fins, which are considered a delicacy in some parts of the world, could fetch outrageous prices. Daniel was struck with the realization. Great whites and other sharks were attracted to the waters near Kapa because they had been purposefully baited. The ecosystem had been upset by the greedy and careless poachers, endangering the sharks as well as the locals. His father had now paid the price. However, Daniel's investigation grew increasingly risky as he discovered more. He was sorting through the evidence he had gathered late one evening when someone knocked on his door. An unfamiliar man cautioned him to cease his inquiries. Tourism was the village's main source of income, so reports of poaching and shark attacks would ruin their way of life. The message was clear. Daniel would be endangering not only himself but the entire village if he persisted. Faced with this dilemma, Daniel struggled. He knew the truth needed to come out, but he also understood the village's dependence on the ocean and the tourists it brought. The poachers were abusing this delicate balance, and everything could be destroyed if they were caught. However, if nothing were done, more human and shark lives would be in danger. Following a second shark attack a few days later, Daniel made his decision. This time, the victim was a young surfer who had entered the baited waters as a tourist. Despite the surfer's survival, the incident rocked the community, and tales of killer sharks quickly spread. Large swaths of the beach were closed by the authorities under duress, further harming the already precarious local economy. After deciding he could no longer keep quiet, Daniel presented his findings to the environmental organization in his community. He urged them to act after gathering testimony from fishermen who had witnessed suspicious activity and proof of illegal poaching. The agency was initially reluctant due to the potential impact on tourism, but eventually agreed to investigate. The crackdown was swift. Over the following weeks, several poaching vessels were seized and their operators arrested. News of the illegal shark fin trade operation spread, but Daniel and the environmental agency worked hard to ensure the narrative focused on the poachers, not the sharks. They emphasized the importance of protecting both the marine life and the people of Kapa, highlighting the need for sustainable fishing practices and stricter enforcement of fishing regulations. In the aftermath, the village struggled to recover from the blows to its economy. Tourism took a temporary hit, but over time the story of Kapa became one of resilience, not tragedy. The beaches reopened and visitors returned, drawn in by the village's commitment to preserving its natural beauty. Daniel, though forever marked by the loss of his father, continued his work as a marine biologist, advocating for the protection of marine ecosystems and raising awareness about the dangers of illegal poaching. In the end, Kalani's death had not been in vain. The waters around Kapa began to heal, and the sharks, once lured in by greed, returned to their natural patterns. The village, though changed, endured, bound together by the knowledge that they had faced the threat and emerged stronger. On April 10, 2024, a team of marine biologists aboard the Sequest submarine set out on an exciting mission to explore the deep waters off the coast of California. They aimed to study a newly discovered shark species rumored to possess unique intelligence. The team comprised 4 professionals, each passionate about marine life and exploration. Dr. Rachel Hayes, the lead marine biologist, had over a decade of experience studying shark behavior. Known for her innovative methods, she sought to protect marine habitats by understanding these creatures. Dr. James Lee, a marine ecologist, focused on sharks' roles in aquatic ecosystems, while Mia Patel, an oceanographer, specialized in using technology to analyze ocean habitats. Lastly, Tom, an experienced submarine pilot, ensured the crew's safety and navigation of the submarine. The team marveled at the underwater beauty as the submarine descended into the ocean's depths. Brightly colored fish darted past, and corals swayed with the currents. After a few hours, they arrived at the designated research site, where signs of the new shark species had been detected. Excitement filled the team as they prepared to gather samples and collect data. Suddenly, an unexpected mechanical failure struck Sequest. Alarms blared and lights flickered. Tom quickly checked the systems, but it became clear they were stranded deep in the ocean. Panic began to spread as the team realized the gravity of the situation. They were surrounded by unknown and potentially dangerous marine creatures in the depths. The tension increased when they spotted a school of large sharks circling the submarine. These sharks were unlike any they had encountered before. Their movements were coordinated, and they appeared aggressively guarding their territory. Fear gripped the team as they realized they were dealing with a mechanical crisis and facing intelligent, dangerous predators. With limited oxygen and failing technology, the team knew they had to act quickly. Gathering around the control panel, they worked on a plan to escape. While James analyzed the data they had collected, Mia checked the emergency systems, hoping to send a distress signal. Rachel reminded the team to remain calm and work together. Their survival depended on combining their expertise and staying focused. As the crew worked to find solutions, the sharks outside continued to circle, their presence a constant reminder of the dangers lurking in the deep. What began as a mission to study a new species quickly turned into a fight for survival against the harsh realities of the ocean. Once filled with wonder, the underwater world had become a place of fear and urgency. With the sharks growing more aggressive and time running out, the crew had to find a way to escape before their situation worsened. They knew that every second counted as they raced against time. As the team aboard the SeaQuest submarine gathered their thoughts, they knew they had to act quickly. The sharks outside continued circling, and the constant sound of water against the hull only heightened their anxiety. Tom quickly assessed their remaining options, reminding the crew they still had some emergency tools and equipment. Mia examined the sonar and communication systems, hoping they could send a distress signal. While the main systems were down, she searched for any way to reach the surface for help. Meanwhile, Dr. Rachel Hayes closely observed the sharks through the small viewports. She noticed their aggressive and intelligent behavior, and realized the sharks were not acting randomly. They used the ocean's darkness to their advantage, working together, which both fascinated and terrified her. Mia suggested creating noise and vibrations to distract the sharks, theorizing it could give them a chance to escape. The crew agreed it was worth a try. They gathered materials and prepared a device typically used for research to emit sound waves in the water. As they activated the device, the sound echoed through the depths. The sharks paused, reacting to the noise. For a brief moment, the tension lifted as the sharks swam away from the submarine, drawn to the distraction. The team felt a surge of hope as they realized their plan might work, but they knew the diversion wouldn't last long. Rachel and James quickly took charge, preparing to navigate the submarine back toward the surface while the sharks were distracted. Tom carefully monitored the controls, guiding the vessel upward with precision. The team communicated constantly, staying focused as they ascended through the dark water. The sounds of the ocean surrounded them, and their survival weighed heavily on each of them. However, just as they started to gain momentum, the distraction device began to fail. Mia noticed the sound waves diminishing, and panic surged through the crew as the sharks sensed the change. They began to return, moving more aggressively toward the submarine. Time was running out, and the team realized their window of opportunity was closing fast. Rachel quickly adapted their plan. She suggested using the remaining emergency oxygen to create bubbles, hoping it would obscure the sharks' vision long enough for them to escape. It was a risky maneuver, but the crew had no other choice. Working together, they released bubbles into the water as they continued their ascent. As they neared the surface, the team felt renewed hope. The bubbles created a temporary barrier, confusing the sharks. The ocean surface came closer with every passing moment, and the light of day began to break through the darkness. Finally, they breached the surface, and sunlight flooded the submarine. The crew erupted in relief, knowing they had escaped. Though their ordeal was over, they realized how fragile the balance between humanity and nature could be. Their experience had changed them, giving them a deeper respect for the creatures of the ocean. Rachel, determined to share their findings, knew this mission had uncovered valuable insights into marine life and sharks' intelligence. Their journey had just begun. The year was 1996. Henry Parker had always felt at home in the water. He was a 35-year-old man with years of experience swimming and gliding through oceans worldwide. Though he had visited a section of South Africa's coastline since his early 20s, it was still his favorite location. False Bay was a well-known beach because of its clear waters and the striking Hottentots Holland Mountains in the background. It was also known for occasionally seeing sharks, especially great whites. But like many of the locals who were experienced swimmers, Henry had become accustomed to the risks of the ocean. Despite his respect for the sea, he had no fear of it. Nearing the beginning of the South African summer, the sun had started to set, and the water took on an orange hue. Because of the calmer beach and softer light, Henry had always liked swimming in the late afternoon. He had arrived that evening accompanied by a few friends he had made at the neighborhood swimming club. They were all gathered on the beach, some wading into the shallows and others relaxing on towels. Henry dove deeper first, excited to feel the cool water on his skin as usual. Simonstown had a long maritime history and was close to the beach. The locals frequently shared legends about shipwrecks and marine life, adding to the bay's enigma. Given the abundance of seals along its rocky shores, False Bay was known to serve as a breeding ground for great white sharks. Sharks were frequently seen there, but despite the dangers, surfers, swimmers, and tourists found refuge in the area because of its beauty. Attacks had occurred in the past, but they were so uncommon that most people didn't consider them until it was too late. The water was remarkably calm that night. Appreciating the solitude, Henry swam farther out than usual. Everything seemed serene, including the soft swells, the distant seabird calls, and the steady pull of the tides. He spent some time floating on his back while gazing up at the sky, which was changing from gold to a deep purple. Little figures could be seen on the horizon as his friends continued to converse on the shore. Even though Henry was by himself, he didn't feel isolated. He had always been with the ocean, but something changed as the sun went down. He sensed a change in the water beneath him before seeing it. In the beginning, it was only a slight tug on his leg. He dismissed it as an occasional occurrence when swimming in open water a current. However, the tug returned more substantial this time, followed by a sharp pain. Henry initially believed he had cut his leg on some underwater debris, possibly a piece of coral or a sharp rock. But when he glanced down, he saw the unmistakable silhouette of a great white shark. Panic surged through him. The shark was massive, at least 15 feet long, and its dorsal fin cut through the water like a knife. In the fading light, the creature seemed to materialize from the depths, its dark eyes fixed on Henry. He kicked hard, trying to free himself, but the shark's grip was relentless. Blood began to cloud the water around him, and with it came the realization that he was in serious trouble. From the shore, his friends had noticed something was wrong. At first, they thought Henry was just messing around. He was known for being playful in the water, sometimes pretending to struggle to get a rise out of people. But as they watched, it became clear that this was no joke. Oliver Voss grabbed a pair of binoculars from his beach bag and focused on Henry's distant thrashing form. That's when he saw the fin. Oliver yelled at the others, but they were helpless. None of them were strong enough swimmers to reach Henry in time. And even if they were, what could they do? The shark was enormous, and the growing darkness made the scene harder to make out. They could only watch in horror as the water churned and Henry's struggles became more frantic. Henry fought with everything he had, but the shark was relentless. It pulled him under its powerful jaws, clamping down on his leg with bone-crushing force. He managed to resurface, gasping for air, but the shark struck again, dragging him deeper. Henry's thoughts raced in those final moments as the cold water closed in around him and the light above grew dimmer. He had always known the risks and told himself to be careful that it wouldn't happen to him, but now he was alone in the water, facing what he had never truly believed would come for him. On the shore, his friends could do nothing but call for help. By the time a rescue boat arrived, it was too late. The water where Henry had been was stained red, and there was no sign of him. As silently as it had entered, the shark had vanished, slipping back into the depths. The community was shocked in the days that followed. The town was affected by Henry's passing because False Bay was a well-liked destination for both residents and visitors. Once renowned for its beauty, the beach suddenly gained notoriety. In an attempt to share the tale of the seasoned swimmer killed by a great white shark, reporters flocked to Simonstown. In response, local authorities tightened security. Lifeguards received further training in shark monitoring and emergency response, and signs alerting people to shark activity were posted along the beach. Some locals demanded the installation of shark nets, while others maintained that sharks, not people, owned the ocean. Despite the heated debate, the town ultimately adopted a more cautious stance. Although the beach was still accessible, there were more stringent guidelines about swimming during specific hours of the day, especially after sunset when sharks were known to hunt. Henry Parker's passing served as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the ocean and the precarious equilibrium between beauty and danger that existed in locations such as False Bay. Oliver, in particular, was troubled by what he had seen. Because they couldn't get the memory of those last moments out of their minds, many stopped swimming in the ocean in the following months. The sea, formerly serene and joyful, had become dreadful. Ultimately, Henry's story became a warning. False Bay's breathtaking views and crystal-clear waters continued to draw visitors, but they were more cautious. After all, people who ventured too far from shore did so at their own risk, because the ocean was never really tamed. It was a wild place, full of life and death. The Albatross II, a small fishing trawler that had spent years navigating the rich waters of the Pacific Ocean, was battered by the sun on its deck in the summer of 1998. On the rocky coast of Baja California, Mexico. Tom Miller, a seasoned fisherman with over 30 years of seafaring experience, led the crew as they concluded yet another exhausting day of yellowfin tuna catching. Having grown up in the seaside town of San Felipe, Miller had a profound respect for ocean mysteries and their creatures. His crew believed in him because they knew his instincts were usually correct. On that particular day, though, Miller noticed something strange. A few miles from the coast, he saw movement close to the water surface as the Albatross II drifted, somewhat struggling and flailing in the waves. Through the use of his binoculars, he was able to discern the outline of a giant sea turtle that was entangled in a pile of abandoned fishing nets. The turtle was slowly drowning despite its desperate attempts to free itself. Miller commanded the crew to cut the engines and lower the small dinghy without hesitation. His first mate, Ignacio Nacho Valdez, expressed concern about what he was planning to do. Hammerhead sharks were known to inhabit the waters off Baja, and the ideal time of year for feeding was the late summer. Miller, however, ignored the warning and concentrated only on the distressing turtle. He believed too many animals perished in these waters due to human carelessness. He could at least save this one. The scene was oddly peaceful as he slipped into the water. The waves bathed in a golden glow from the sun. The water felt cool against Miller's skin as he swam in its direction. As he arrived at the trapped animal, his knife, a reliable partner on all his fishing excursions, shone in his hand. As Miller cautiously started slicing away the nylon netting wrapped around the turtle's neck and flippers, its terrified eyes fixed on him. Miller was unaware that the struggling turtle's agitation had attracted unwelcome attention. A hammerhead shark had been circling in the shadowy depths below. Even though hammerhead sharks, distinguished by their characteristic T-shaped heads, were typically not hostile toward people, their hunting instincts were aroused by the splashing and the smell of marine life. It thought the frantic motions were prey. The crew was anxiously watching Miller's efforts to free the turtle above the surface. Just as he cut the last tangle of the net away, the hammerhead struck. Without warning, the shark lunged, its mighty jaws clamping down on Miller's leg. A cry of agony reverberated throughout the water, and the Albatross II crew froze in shock. Nacho reacted first. Fear had taken over, but he snatched up a harpoon and yelled for the others to lower the dinghy. The shark bit again, severing muscle and bone. Miller's breath came in ragged gasps as he fought to stay afloat, and blood hazed the water. Now free, the turtle swam away from the mayhem, oblivious to the tragedy behind it. By the time Nacho and another deckhand, Javier, had reached the site in the dinghy, it was too late. Miller's face was pale from blood loss, and he was hardly conscious. Although they could bring him on board, the damage had already been done. The shark vanished into the depths, leaving nothing but a whirlpool of blood. To save him, Miller's crew exerted every effort. Although the closest hospital was hours away, they attempted to keep him conscious by using tourniquets and radioing for emergency help. The bite had severed a major artery, and despite their efforts, Tom Miller died before they reached the shore. His death rocked the small fishing community of San Felipe. Tom had been a hero in the community and was admired for his leadership, compassion, and prowess on the water. When word of his untimely death spread, the tale of the rescue mission gone wrong soon became the talk in Baja California. Some criticized him for venturing into shark-infested waters without the necessary safety gear, while others celebrated him as a hero who had paid the ultimate price for his altruism. Following Miller's passing, local fishermen and environmentalists engaged in contentious discussions. Some claimed that more stringent procedures in hazardous waters should be implemented to rescue operations involving marine life. Others thought that Miller was a victim of the ocean's unpredictability and had just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The incident also spurred discussions concerning the expanding issue of abandoned fishing nets or ghost nets, which threatened marine life long after being discarded. His friends and family memorialized Tom Miller's story in the months following his death. To honor his memory, a small plaque was erected at the harbor in San Felipe, where the Albatross II was docked. Tom Miller, whose bravery and love of the ocean would never be forgotten, was remembered on the plaque. Miller's legacy endured despite his brief life. His death served as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface of the ocean, but also of the compassion that drove him to act no matter the cost. His crewmates, especially Nacho, continued to fish the waters off Baja California, but they never forgot the lesson they had learned that fateful day. A remote surf break called Pauwalu Point waited for daybreak 2002 deep on Maui's north shore. This hidden gem was a local surfer's dream come true, surrounded by lush greenery and volcanic rock. For ages, people aware of the location's existence were drawn to it because of its immaculate waters and flawless waves. According to Pauwalu Point's history, the ancient Hawaiian fishermen respected the sea for its power and abundance. Local surfers prepared to take on the morning waves as the first light peeked over the horizon. One of them was pro surfer Keone Maho, who strongly bonded with the sea. He had 3 friends by his side: the fearless Leilani Punahele, the hilarious Makayo Lono, and the unrivaled agility of Nalani Kahele on the board. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, and the waves gently lapped, making the morning appear ideal. The surfers paddled out, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline. But a strange assembly was taking place below the surface. The sudden abundance of baitfish, probably caused by overfishing and shifting ocean temperatures, had attracted a sizable school of hammerhead sharks to the area. All the surfers initially saw moving beneath them were shadows. An uneasiness crept into Keone's ever-observant mind. Shark sightings in these waters were not unusual, but the sheer quantity was unnerving. The silhouettes of hammerhead sharks circling below were visible in the clearer water as the sun rose higher. Normally inquisitive and non-aggressive, the sharks didn't seem the same this morning. Their movements were agitated, which was a stark contrast to their usual behavior. The mood changed abruptly from calm to tense. One shark brushed past Leilani's board with unusual force, causing her quick instincts to alert her to the danger. The group started to feel panicked. Makayo joked about becoming breakfast to lighten the mood, but his laughter was forced. Nalani was looking for a way out when she noticed a small fishing boat nearby. Hope waved for assistance, her eyes flickering. The seasoned Kai Maleko led the fishermen who saw the disturbance. They maneuvered their boat closer as soon as they realized how serious the situation was. Kai had been in these waters for decades and knew enough about shark behavior to understand this wasn't typical. Keone's board gave way abruptly as the sharks started to close in. A shark lunged in its strong jaws, closing on prey frighteningly. Adrenaline flooded Keone as he battled to keep his balance and ward off the predator. The other surfers came together, their fear evident but eclipsed by their determination to live. Makayo and Nalani paddled wildly in the boat's direction while Leilani used her board to create space. Armed with whatever gear and oars they could find, the fishermen made noise and splashed to scare away the sharks. The struggle between nature and humanity unfolded beneath the rising sun. Keone, injured but determined, managed to climb onto the boat with help from Kai. With their hearts racing, the others trailed behind the fishermen, who kept thwarting the sharks. After boarding, the group paused to regain their breath. Keone had made it alive as the sharks relented back to the deep. The fishermen easily administered first aid to the wounds Keone had. Although the immediate threat had subsided, the encounter had an impact. Keone's wounds served as a clear reminder of the horror of the morning, even though they were not life-threatening. A probe got underway in the days that followed. Attracted by the shark's peculiar behavior, marine biologists investigated the area. They deduced that the shark's hostile behavior resulted from overfishing and temperature changes in the water, which had upset the shark's regular prey cycles. The events at Pawalu Point triggered conversations concerning the precarious balance between human activity and preserving marine ecosystems. Regaining their respect for the ocean and its creatures, the surfers returned to the waves despite being shaken. The experience made Keone, Leilani, Makayo, and Nalani closer than before. They shared their experience to increase awareness and became advocates for sustainable fishing methods. Though its power and mystery were better understood, Pawalu Point remained a popular surf spot. The surfers were aware that they were only guests in the shark's domain, and that the dance between predator and prey would always keep them in their place of humility. In the following years, locals would learn the legend of the Dawn Hammerhead raid as a tale of bravery, survival, and the constant call of the sea. In the summer of 2008, both residents and visitors swarmed the beaches of the Western Cape region of South Africa. Mossel Bay, a seaside town renowned for its breathtaking vistas and immaculate waters, has developed into a major venue for open-water swimming events. Cape Town native Rachel Venter, a professional swimmer, had been a regular presence in these waters for a long time. Over time, she had established herself as one of the nation's best open-water swimmers. However, something unthinkable happened on that fateful day as she got ready for yet another swim. Adventurers and thrill-seekers had long flocked to Mossel Bay. Rachel slipped into the water after adjusting her goggles as the summer sun pounded the bay. She was swimming as part of her preparation for an impending competition, and it was a routine swim. Unaware that they were going to see something frightful, the crowd gathered along the shoreline, enjoying the afternoon. With the strength and grace she had developed over years of focused training, Rachel's body sliced through the waves as she moved fluidly through the water. But there was a stir beneath the surface. Sharks patrolled these waters, and Rachel had always known about them. The dangers were known to her. An almost 5-meter-long great white, however, swam closer to the coast than usual on this particular day. Sharks typically stayed away from people, but this one seemed different, almost agitated. The predator's enormous jaws suddenly closed around Rachel's leg with terrifying force as it leaped upward from the depths. The assault was brutal and quick and ended in a matter of seconds as the shark went back into the deep. The water surrounding Rachel turned crimson as her scream shattered the atmosphere. On the beach, panic broke out. She was already damaged when rescue crews and lifeguards rushed to her aid. The shark disappeared back into the depths as swiftly as it had appeared. Rachel was hauled from the water, her leg ripped and gushing blood, barely conscious. Her professional swimming career was in ruins, but she lived. She would always carry the emotional and physical scars. After several weeks, Rachel withdrew into herself. The athlete who had once been lively and self-assured was now overcome with fear and plagued by attack-related nightmares. The doctors had told her she was lucky to be alive, but Rachel didn't feel lucky. Every time she looked at her scarred leg, she was reminded of the creature lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the next victim. But something else troubled her. The shark's behavior had been odd. Why had it come so close to shore? Why had it attacked with such aggression? Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. She began to research shark attacks in the area. She discovered a disturbing trend. Incidents of shark aggression had been increasing not just in Mossel Bay, but all along South Africa's southern coast. Determined to find answers, she reached out to a local marine biologist, Dr. Kale van Rooyen. Kale, a quiet and reflective man with a deep passion for marine conservation, had been studying shark behavior for over 2 decades. He had noticed the same pattern but had struggled to find a concrete explanation. Rachel and Kale began to investigate together. They combed through data on shark populations' migration patterns and environmental changes. It wasn't long before they uncovered something alarming. A series of underwater construction projects had been underway for the past few years. Companies were building massive tunnels to transport natural gas from offshore rigs to the mainland. These underwater structures, though necessary for the energy industry, were disrupting marine ecosystems in ways that no one had anticipated. The tunnels emitted low-frequency sound vibrations that traveled for miles through the water. The sharks were confused by these noises and moved closer to the coast in pursuit of food or safety. They were becoming more hostile and likely to attack because the very existence of these structures was changing their innate behavior. Clearly, Rachel and Cale needed to take action. The construction companies, backed by powerful investors, were unlikely to halt their projects without significant pressure. The two of them began gathering evidence, conducting interviews with local fishermen, and documenting the changes in shark behavior. Rachel, still struggling with her trauma, found that the search for answers gave her a renewed sense of purpose. She would never swim professionally again, but she could still make a difference. After months of research, Rachel and Cale presented their findings to the local government. The hearings were tense. Representatives from the construction companies argued that the tunnels were essential for the region's economic growth. But the evidence was clear. Unless something were done to mitigate the impact of these projects, shark attacks would continue, putting countless lives at risk. In the end, the government was forced to reevaluate the construction plans. New regulations were put in place to minimize the disruption to marine life, and several of the most harmful projects were scaled back. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. Rachel, though still scarred, had found a way to move forward. Though she would never race through the water again, she reclaimed her strength differently. The ocean, once her greatest love and greatest fear, had become her cause. 25th, 2024. The seasoned crew aboard the fishing vessel Horizon's Edge embarked on another night patrol in the deep waters off the coast of Florida. The crew comprised experienced fishermen who had spent years working together. Captain Mike Dawson, a man in his 50s known for his deep knowledge of the sea and its mysteries, was at the helm. Mike's calm demeanor put his crew at ease, even during the toughest conditions. He had seen many things in his career, but always looked for the unexpected. The crew comprised Jake, the first mate in his 30s. He had a natural fishing talent, having worked on boats since his teens. Enthusiastic and sharp-eyed, he often spotted unusual things before others. Emily, the ship's biologist in her late 20s, was passionate about marine life and provided valuable insights into sea creatures. Tom, a reliable deckhand in his 40s, was known for his strength and always ensured the crew's safety during their shifts. On this particular night, the atmosphere was calm, with the moon shining brightly over the water. The crew was focused on their duties, preparing their gear for a routine catch. However, something unusual caught their attention as they moved further from shore. Using their night vision equipment, they noticed a large mass moving beneath the surface. Piqued by curiosity, they decided to approach cautiously. The crew was shocked to see a school of unnaturally large sharks swimming together as they got closer. Their size and how they moved in unison were unlike anything the crew had ever witnessed. It was as if the sharks were exhibiting coordinated behavior, which raised alarms in Emily's mind. She began to speculate about what could be causing this strange phenomenon. Tension hung in the air as the crew watched the sharks, their instincts warning them of potential danger. Suddenly, without warning, one of the sharks lunged out of the water and attacked one of the sailors leaning over the side of the boat. The crew erupted into chaos, shouting in horror as they rushed to help their colleague. The attack was swift and brutal, sending shockwaves of fear through everyone aboard the Horizon's Edge. Captain Mike barked orders for the crew to retreat to safety in the frenzy, but the panic was palpable. They quickly grabbed emergency equipment and desperately called for backup. The situation was unprecedented, and the crew realized they were facing something never documented in marine biology. The sheer size and aggression of the sharks indicated that they were not acting normally. With the vessel now in a state of emergency, the crew had to come together and devise a plan to protect themselves. Mike and Jake took charge, assessing the injuries and ensuring everyone was accounted for. Emily's scientific knowledge began to kick in as she tried to figure out why the sharks behaved this way. She wondered if something in the environment had triggered this unusual behavior. As the crew worked to stabilize the situation, they couldn't shake the fear of what they were dealing with. They were not just fishermen anymore. They were caught fighting for survival against an aggressive force of nature. The night that had started so calmly had turned into a nightmare. and the mystery of the sharks loomed large in their minds. The horizon's edge was now in uncharted waters, literally and metaphorically, and the crew knew they had to find a way to survive the night. The crew quickly gathered their wits to formulate a plan as the chaos continued on the horizon's edge. Captain Mike assessed the situation, realizing that they needed to move fast. The injured sailor was in shock, and they had to get him to safety. Jake and Tom worked together to pull the sailor away from the boat's edge, keeping him calm despite the chaos surrounding them. Emily used her training to check the sailor's injuries, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. She knew they had to act quickly to prevent further harm. The sight of the large, aggressive shark swimming close to the boat made her heart race, but she forced herself to stay focused. She recalled her studies about shark behavior and understood that something was wrong in the ocean. These sharks were not acting like normal predators. They were coordinated and appeared to be hunting as a group. With the injured sailor stabilized, Mike ordered the crew to raise the anchor and prepare to leave the area. They needed to get away from the sharks and find a safer spot. As the crew worked to maneuver the boat, the tension in the air was thick with fear. Every splash of water or sudden movement sent a jolt of anxiety through them. Just as they thought they might be able to escape, the sharks circled the boat again, showing no signs of retreat. Their large bodies moved in sync beneath the water, creating a sense of unease among the crew. It was as if the sharks knew of their presence and would not let them leave easily. The crew quickly realized they were facing an attack and a mysterious behavior that could threaten their survival. Mike steered the boat away from the area with the engine roaring to life, hoping to distance themselves from the aggressive school of sharks. However, the sharks followed closely, indicating they needed to be finished. Emily's mind raced as she wondered why these sharks acted this way. She knew that environmental changes could affect marine life, but what could have caused such a dramatic shift in behavior? Emily quickly jotted down her observations as they sped away, documenting everything she could about the sharks' actions. She understood that this incident could lead to significant discoveries about marine biology, but right now her main concern was the safety of her crew. After an eternity, the crew finally reached a quieter part of the water. The sharks seemed to lose interest, allowing the crew to sigh in relief. They quickly anchored the boat and assessed the damage. The injured sailors needed immediate medical attention, but they had managed to escape the jaws of danger. Once they were safe, the crew gathered to discuss what had just happened. They shared their thoughts on the sharks' unusual behavior and speculated about the reasons behind it. Emily suggested that water temperature or pollution changes might drive the sharks to act aggressively. The crew agreed they must report their findings to the local marine authorities. The aftermath of the encounter was not just about surviving the night. It was about understanding the implications of their experience. The crew had faced a terrifying ordeal that could have ended in tragedy, but they emerged with a newfound respect for the power of nature. They realized they needed to be more cautious and aware of their environmental impact. The crew members were determined to share their story as they returned to shore. They hoped that by raising awareness about the behavior of these sharks, they could contribute to protecting marine life and the safety of those who ventured out to sea. July 19, 2009, 4 friends, Maria Teixeira, Pedro Santos, Inés Carvalho, and João Almeida, arrived in the Azores for what was supposed to be the vacation of a lifetime. The archipelago, located off the coast of Portugal, is famous for its beautiful landscapes and pristine waters filled with marine life. After a few days of sightseeing, they decided to book a snorkeling tour to explore the ocean up close. They were excited, expecting to swim with fish and maybe catch a glimpse of dolphins. That morning, the group boarded a small boat with a local guide who assured them the waters were safe and calm. The ocean was inviting, the sky clear, and the friends could hardly wait to dive in. Their guide led them to a spot just off the coast of Fayal Island, a well-known location for snorkeling due to its crystal-clear water and vibrant coral. The guide briefly mentioned that sharks were sometimes seen in the area, but were usually harmless blue sharks, more curious than dangerous. Blue sharks are common in the waters surrounding the Azores. They are sleek, fast swimmers and generally considered non-aggressive towards humans. They feed mostly on squid and small fish. However, their curiosity can sometimes lead to closer encounters with snorkelers and divers, particularly when attracted by the movements and sounds of boats. This particular day, a blue shark had been circling near the area, drawn in by the disturbance of the boat's engine and the splashes from the group as they entered the water. The group donned their snorkeling gear and dove in, laughing and marveling at the colorful fish darting around them. Maria swam ahead, pointing out a school of fish to the others, while João floated nearby, taking in the beauty of the underwater world. Everything seemed perfect, and the experience was exactly what they had hoped for. But not far beneath them, the blue shark was watching. It approached slowly, curious about the sudden activity. At first, the shark maintained its distance, but as the group continued to swim and splash, it became bolder, moving closer with each pass. João was the first to notice the shadow below and gestured to the others, but they brushed it off, assuming it was just another fish. As they swam farther from the boat, the shark's behavior changed. It began to circle tighter, its sleek body moving more aggressively. Pedro, who had been enjoying the swim, felt anxious as he noticed the shark approaching. It wasn't just passing by, it was coming toward them. Panic set in when the blue shark made its first rapid approach. It darted straight toward Pedro, veering away at the last second, its tail brushing against his leg. The close encounter sent a wave of fear through the group as they realized they were no longer alone. Inez screamed into her snorkel, frantically trying to swim back toward the boat. João, now seeing the shark's size and speed, grabbed Maria's arm, urging her to follow. The shark was circling faster now, its curiosity replaced by predatory instinct. It swam directly beneath the group, its dark shape clear in the water, and then shot upward toward Maria. She saw it too late. The shark's sharp snout struck her side, knocking her off balance as she struggled to regain control of the water. Pedro shouted for everyone to stay together, but the group was already scattered in the chaos, trying to swim for safety. The shark made another pass, this time targeting João. It swam close enough for him to feel the rush of water as it brushed past. His heart pounded as he kicked furiously, trying to reach the boat. But the ship, which had seemed so close just moments before, now felt impossibly far. The shark wasn't backing off, it was hunting, and the danger increased every second they stayed in the water. Inez, struggling to keep up with the others, saw the shark's dorsal fin cut through the surface. Her breaths came in short, panicked bursts as she tried to swim faster. But the shark was faster still. It circled back, coming up from below and ramming into Pedro, its teeth grazing his leg. Blood clouded the water around them as Pedro cried out in pain, his leg throbbing from the shark's bite. With Pedro injured and the shark growing more aggressive, the group had no choice but to fight back to the boat. João grabbed Maria and pulled her toward the ship, shouting for Pedro and Inez to follow as fast as possible. The shark was relentless, its sleek body cutting through the water as it made another pass, this time closer to Inez. She kicked hard, desperate to escape its reach. Pedro, bleeding and exhausted, struggled to keep swimming. His leg was slowing him down and he could feel the shark getting closer again. The pain from the bite was overwhelming, but he couldn't stop. In a desperate effort, João grabbed Pedro's arm and dragged him toward the boat. Sensing its prey slipping away, the shark lunged, its jaws snapping shut inches from Pedro's foot. With one last burst of energy, the group reached the boat. Finally realizing the danger, the guide pulled them aboard, their bodies trembling from the adrenaline and fear. As they collapsed onto the deck, gasping for breath, the blue shark circled the boat once more before disappearing into the deep, leaving only the memory of its attack behind. The dream vacation had turned into a nightmare, but they had survived. The shark's cold eyes and relentless pursuit would haunt them, but they knew they were lucky to have escaped. It was September 22, 2007, and Tom Garrison was alone on his small lobster boat just off the coast of Maine. The morning had been routine so far, like many before. Tom had been a lobsterman for over 20 years, making a living pulling in traps from the cold waters of the North Atlantic. He knew the waters well, every hidden rock and stretch of coastline familiar to him. The traps were full today, and the catch was promising. So Tom worked efficiently, hoisting the cages from the depths, checking for lobsters, and resetting the traps. The sky was overcast, a typical day for Maine, but the waters were calm enough for a smooth haul. Tom felt comfortable and secure in his routine, paying little attention to the surroundings as he focused on his work. He hummed as he pulled up another cage, heavy with struggling lobsters. He leaned over the edge of his boat to untangle the trap when the ship rocked unexpectedly. At first, Tom thought it was just a strong wave, but then the ship jolted harder this time, nearly knocking him off balance. Puzzled, Tom looked out over the side, and that's when he saw the dark shape circling the boat. It was a bull shark, much larger than any fish he had encountered in these waters. Bull sharks weren't common here, but with warming waters and shifting marine life patterns, they had started showing up more often in New England waters. Bull sharks were aggressive and known for their unpredictable behavior, and this one seemed drawn to the struggling lobsters. Before Tom could react, the shark rammed the side of the boat with alarming force. The ship lurched violently, and Tom scrambled to keep his footing. His heart began to race as the reality of the situation hit him. The shark wasn't just investigating the boat, it was attacking it. Tom had heard stories of sharks becoming aggressive around fishing boats, but he never imagined it would happen to him. Another hit from the shark sent Tom sprawling onto the deck, and before he could get back on his feet, the boat tipped sharply to one side. Suddenly, Tom lost his grip and was thrown overboard, crashing into the icy water below. He surfaced quickly, gasping for air, the cold taking his breath away as the realization of his situation sank in. The bull shark was still circling, drawn by the commotion and the scent of the lobsters in the water. Tom knew he was in immediate danger. Now, rocking without control, the boat drifted away from him, and the shark was closing in. Tom's survival instincts kicked in, and he tried to stay calm, but he could feel the raw fear rising inside him as the predator moved closer. He glanced around, looking for anything that could help. His boat was too far to reach quickly, and the shore was distant, a faint outline through the misty air. The bull shark passed underneath him, its massive shadow sending a jolt of panic through his body. Tom knew that bull sharks were not only fast but also extremely territorial. He had to act fast. Tom kicked his legs, trying to stay afloat, but every movement drew the shark's attention. The water churned as the shark turned sharply, its dorsal fin cutting through the surface as it returned toward him. Tom knew he couldn't outswim it. His only chance was to outmaneuver it. He had spent his life on these waters, and knew erratic movements could distract sharks. He thrashed his arms in the water, creating as much turbulence as possible, hoping to confuse the predator long enough to buy himself some time. The shark circled him closer this time. Tom felt the displacement of water as it swam just beneath him, its powerful body sending waves that rocked him. Then, without warning, the shark lunged. Tom twisted his body, narrowly avoiding the open jaws, but the shark grazed his side, leaving a deep scratch on his leg. The pain shot through him, but there was no time to think about it. He kicked hard, swimming for the boat. The shark wasn't done. It came at him again, this time from below, and Tom felt the force of its body as it rammed into him, pushing him back under the water. He struggled to resurface, his lungs burning as he fought to stay above the surface. The boat drifted farther away, but Tom couldn't focus on that. He had to keep the shark at bay. In desperation, Tom reached out for anything to defend himself. His hands found a piece of debris floating nearby, a wooden plank from his boat. As the shark made another pass, he swung the plank with all his strength, striking the shark on the nose. The shark recoiled, momentarily stunned, but it was far from retreating. Tom knew he had only seconds before it attacked again. Summoning the last of his strength, Tom began swimming toward the boat, the plank still clutched in his hand. The cold water sapped his energy, but he pushed on, knowing it was his only chance. Behind him, the shark circled again, but its movements had slowed, the blow to its nose having thrown it off for the moment. Tom finally reached the side of his boat and hauled himself aboard with every ounce of strength he had left. He collapsed onto the deck, gasping for air, his body shaking from the cold and the adrenaline. The shark passed by the boat, its dark shape visible beneath the surface, before slowly disappearing into the depths. Tom lay on the deck, his leg bleeding and his body exhausted, but he was alive. The bull shark had come terrifyingly close, but he had outlasted it. As he lay there, catching his breath, he realized how close he had come to becoming another story in the news. A reminder that danger could appear without warning, even in the waters he had known his whole life. Aya Chen was a bright marine biology student, who ended up far from home in San Diego, California, in the summer of 1994. Her investigation had led her to the pristine waters surrounding a remote reef off the Fijian coast, more precisely close to the island of Vanuatu. The region was perfect for marine research because it had remained primarily unaltered by human activity, and was renowned for its biodiversity and pristine coral structures. Making the most of her grant to investigate how climate change affected coral bleaching was Mia's top priority. The reef had long piqued the interest of marine biologists and was referred to locally as Tavoro's Garden, a reference to a Fijian myth about a sea demon. Its remote location and intricate underwater terrain made it a problematic workplace and a research goldmine. Numerous sharks and other marine life species could be found in the deep waters with abrupt drops into the abyss. However, the locals had frequently warned of the risks of diving in the area by yourself. Mia, like many scientists, was motivated by curiosity and a desire to leave her mark. One day, Mia got ready for her third solo dive of the week. The water was unusually still and reflected the midday sun like a mirror in the calm weather. As usual, she had prepared her dive carefully, setting up her gear and checking her oxygen levels twice. Mia chose to go deeper to collect information on the coral beds on the reef while her colleagues, positioned on a nearby boat, were performing surface-level water tests. The drop was familiar and easy. The water felt like a second home to Mia, who had spent years perfecting her diving techniques. The coral's vivid hues and schools of tiny fish darting in and out of the structures welcomed her as she descended farther. She took her time carefully documenting her project data and taking pictures. For the first 20 minutes of the dive, everything appeared normal. Then something occurred. It began as a faint change in the water that she could not identify. Mia initially believed the movement to be the ocean current's natural ebb and flow, but it felt more intentional. She stopped and lingered, looking around her for a while. She could see far into the blue beyond the reef because of the excellent visibility. Then she caught sight of a shadow in the distance. Circulating was the reef shark, a streamlined and nimble predator typical of these waters. Mia wasn't worried at first. Being a marine biologist, she was aware of shark behavior. The 6-foot-long shark appeared more inquisitive than hostile. The distance between them gradually shrank as it swam in lazy arcs. Mia observed it objectively, taking note of its dimensions and motion. She had already come into contact with sharks during dives, so there wasn't much to be concerned about as long as she kept calm and didn't agitate it. But the shark started acting differently as the minutes went by. It began to move more erratically and encircled Mia more closely. The electronic pulses from her equipment and presence caught its attention. Mia began to become tense. She was sufficiently knowledgeable about shark behavior to identify the warning indications of increased curiosity, which could indicate an impending attack. Mia started up slowly, taking care to avoid any abrupt movements. She continued to watch the shark while her heartbeat accelerated. The shark's body language shifted from curiosity to predatoriness as it followed her. It was now tracking her, not just looking. When the shark swooped closer, its sleek body moving at frightening speed, she was still about 30 feet below the surface. With more frantic movements, Mia kicked away out of instinct. Sensing her fear, the shark retaliated accordingly. It brushed her leg with its muzzle as it made a swift pass. Despite her sudden panic, Mia continued to move. She was only a few feet away from the surface. But suddenly, the shark attacked. Mia barely had time to respond because it happened so quickly. The shark's strong jaws closed on her leg, causing pain in her body as the bite struck. She flailed in an attempt to escape, but the shark's hold was unyielding. As the water surrounding her became hazy with blood, Mia knew she would not survive. Although they had been monitoring her progress, her boatmates were too far away to witness the precise moment of the attack. They knew something had gone wrong when her equipment abruptly stopped transmitting. When they finally made it to the scene, they discovered nothing but Mia's buoyancy vest and a piece of her ripped wetsuit floating on the water's surface. She had vanished from view. Local officials, marine specialists, and even the Fijian Navy participated in the extensive search initiated in the following days. However, Mia's body was never found. Her disturbing underwater camera footage, discovered embedded in the coral, was the only evidence of her. The shark circling the desperate climb and the unexpected rush of chaos were all captured in the video. which captured her last moments. Mia's passing rocked the marine biology community. She was recognized as a rising star for her commitment and enthusiasm toward marine conservation. The event generated a contentious discussion regarding the safety of solitary dives, particularly in isolated and unpredictably changing areas. Many questioned whether stricter safety regulations should have been implemented and what procedures should be in place for researchers in such settings. Mia Chen's death devastated her co-workers, especially her mentor, Dr. Zayden Keller. Thanks to Dr. Keller, Mia's grant had mainly been secured, and he held himself accountable for not demanding more stringent safety measures. After the tragedy, he lobbied for reforms in marine research, particularly in shark-populated waters. His work ultimately resulted in the Mia Chen Memorial Fund, which awarded grants for marine research focusing on risk mitigation and safety. Although the waters surrounding Tevaro's garden were still stunning and enigmatic, the memory of Mia's terrible demise tarnished them. The actual threat was much more accurate for the scientific community, a constant reminder of the dangers associated with venturing into the unknown. But locals still told tales of the sea demon that haunted the waters. Bolinas, nestled between the jagged cliffs of Marin County and the turbulent Pacific Ocean, had long been a secret haven for surfers looking for uncrowded waves outside Southern California. Fishing, surfing, and the sporadic storms that tore through the town's shores were all integral parts of its past. However, a change had occurred in the previous several months. People in the area had become increasingly uneasy after several reports of shark sightings near the Point Reyes National Seashore. But Jamie Summers, 17, was not one to be easily put off. Jamie, who had grown up surfing these waters, was tall, lanky, and had a mop of sun-bleached hair. Maybe he was overconfident in reading the ocean and avoiding danger. Jamie dismissed the warning when it was announced that surfers should avoid the water because shark activity had increased. He was more excited about riding the best waves of the season than afraid of what might be beneath the surface. The sun had just risen that morning, and the horizon was glowing a gentle pink. A unique surf session was promised by the glassy water and the precise way the waves were rolling in. Jamie picked up his board and started down the rocky, winding path to the beach. The typical surfer crowd was conspicuously missing because the advisory deterred even the most experienced wave riders. However, Jamie saw a chance here. When he was by himself, he could enjoy the ocean. His arms moving in a rhythmic motion through the water as he paddled out was meditative. The waves' roar and the seagull's sporadic squawk were the only sounds in the early morning silence. The ocean appeared serene yet alive, beckoning him to venture into its depths. Unaware that someone else was observing from below, he sat up on his board and looked to the horizon for the next set of waves. A giant bull shark lurked beneath the surface. Bull sharks were infamous for their violent nature and propensity to swim near the coast, even in shallow waters. Warmer water temperatures were blamed for the recent increase in sightings as they attracted more of these predators to Bolinas. Jamie was unaware of the danger rapidly approaching because he was too preoccupied with the waves. The splashing of his hands and feet, which resembled the motions of a wounded fish, attracted the shark as he paddled to retrieve the next swell. The predator's muscular, streamlined body sliced through the water with terrifying accuracy as it zeroed in. Jamie experienced an abrupt, sharp pain that exploded in his right leg halfway through his paddle. Although his mind was racing to process what had happened, the pain was overwhelming and instantaneous. The shark's jaws had clamped down on his calf, and Jamie was dragged under as it thrashed. He kicked frantically in an attempt to escape as panic shot through him. Gasping for air, he surfaced, but the surrounding water had turned a murky, dark red. His board was no longer attached to his foot and was floating aimlessly close by. The shark returned in a circle, its dark outline just below the surface. Jamie tried to swim, but his injured leg was useless. The salt water stung the open wound, and each movement sent waves of pain shooting through his body. He was aware that he was in danger. It seemed impossible to reach the shore, and no one was nearby to call for assistance. With its powerful body rushing upward, the shark reappeared. Jamie was struck again, this time by the predator's jaws tearing into his side. The battle was brutal, short, and without hope. He tried desperately to repel the attack, but the wounds were too great. His strength diminished as the shark pulled him under the water one last time. Jamie had previously found happiness and freedom in the ocean, but now it had taken him. Mateo Valdez, a local fisherman who had been out gathering bait close to the rocks, found his body when it washed up on the shore later that afternoon. The first indication that something was seriously amiss was the sight of Jamie's broken surfboard drifting aimlessly in the shallows. The tragedy quickly rocked the small town of Bolinas after the authorities were called. Jamie Summers's passing rocked the surfing community. He was popular and well known for his love of the sea and his spirit of adventure. However, his premature death provoked a heated discussion about safety in dangerous waters. Surfers should respect the ocean's unpredictable nature, particularly in regions where shark activity is known to occur. Others believed that Jamie had died doing what he loved, and that the excitement and love of surfing outweighed the danger. The beach at Bolinas was eerily quiet in the days after the attack. Few dared to venture outside even though the waves were still perfect and inviting. During a memorial service for Jamie, surfers from all over the coast came to show their support. Flowers, candles, and notes were scattered across the beach as a temporary shrine to the boy who had lived and died by the sea. The loss was heartbreaking for Jamie's family. His parents, Robert and Elaine Summers, advocated for improved regulations and warnings in areas known to be shark-infested. They also accepted that their son had gone too soon. Jamie had been motivated by a deep and perilous love for the ocean. Ultimately, the tale of Jamie Summers turned into a warning. Although his love of surfing was evident, it served as a reminder that even the most accomplished and self-assured people were susceptible to the erratic effects of nature. Even though the ocean was beautiful and powerful, it could suddenly turn deadly. An ambitious and gifted underwater photographer named Laura Bennett found herself off the coast of Komodo Island, Indonesia, in late 1991. A paradise and a mystery, the archipelago was renowned for its stunning coral reefs and plethora of marine life. Laura had long dreamed of capturing the rare creatures that lurked beneath its waters. The stretch where she chose to dive had a reputation for unpredictable currents and low visibility, but it was also home to some of the most elusive marine species. Despite the risks, she was determined to document the biodiversity that had drawn explorers and photographers worldwide for decades. Laura had spent years honing her craft, traveling from the frozen waters of the Arctic to the vibrant reefs of the Pacific. But Komodo presented a new challenge. She wasn't just here for the vibrant coral or colorful fish. She was after something unique, a critically endangered hawksbill sea turtle known to frequent these waters. It had become a personal mission for her. The year before, she had seen a fleeting glimpse of one, but the shot was out of focus, a rare failure in her otherwise flawless portfolio. This time she was determined to capture the perfect image. The early morning sun barely filtered through the choppy waters as she descended. Clad in a custom-made wetsuit and carrying her trusted underwater camera, Laura moved with practiced ease. She had hired a small local crew to assist him, but they remained on the boat, leaving her alone in the vast, silent expanse of the ocean. The water was colder than usual, and visibility was low, creating an eerie atmosphere. However, Laura was used to this condition and focused on her goal. After an hour of swimming through the reefs, she spotted a hawksbill sea turtle grazing on the coral below. Its shell glittered with intricate patterns that seemed to catch the faint light. Laura's heart raced. She carefully adjusted her camera to capture the turtle in all its glory. Her hands moved precisely, framing the shot in her mind before pressing the shutter. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The faint silhouette in the distance, however, was something Laura missed. The vibrations of her movements had attracted a giant tiger shark, which had been circling the area. It thought she was a wounded or feeble prey in the murky water. Her actions triggered the shark's hunting instinct as she moved to get a better angle. Being focused on her work, Laura was unaware of the enormous creature's approach. Then she felt a sudden change in current, and as she turned, she noticed the tiger shark staring at her from less than 10 feet away. She felt a panic attack, but her training soon took over. She knew that thrashing or sudden movements could agitate the shark even more. Using one hand to push herself away from the coral and the other to hold her camera, she attempted to slowly back away. It was too late, though. The shark lunged, perplexed by her silhouette and the low light. The camera was knocked out of her hands by the first impact. Laura attempted to defend herself by hitting the shark's nose, but the bite's force was too great. She felt her strength leaving her as the pain was sudden and intense. She gave a feeble kick, aware that her chances of surviving were diminishing. The predator appeared to be drawn to every movement. Her limbs felt heavy, and her vision blurred as she attempted to swim toward the surface. Laura's thoughts were not on the impending danger or the pain that consumed her body in those last moments as the world around her grew darker. Instead, her thoughts turned to the turtle, who continued to graze calmly on the reef below, oblivious to the violence nearby. Before the attack, she had taken one final picture of the turtle, a stunningly beautiful animal in its natural environment. She came for the shot, but her life would be at stake. Local fishermen who had been notified when Laura's crew did not hear from her discovered her body a few days later. Her camera was entangled in a patch of coral on the sea floor, which was still intact. When the photos were developed, they showed her last moments, a sequence of breathtaking pictures of the sea turtle, followed by hazy, disorganized shots of the incident. The final image, taken in a panic, only displayed ferocious water and shadow swirls. The tragedy rocked underwater photography. Known for her courage and dedication to capturing the beauty of the ocean, Laura was a well-respected individual. Her passing triggered a contentious discussion among marine biologists and other photographers concerning the morality of working in such hazardous conditions. Could the beauty of the ocean outweigh the perils that lurked beneath its surface? And was it worth risking one's life to pursue art? There was no simple solution for anyone who knew Laura. She had died doing what she loved, but the cost had been unimaginable. Her tragic and flawless last shot would always remind us of how fleeting life was beneath the waves. In 2012, the sun was high above the Florida Keys, illuminating the turquoise waters with a golden tinge. The Langston family, Father Cyrus Langston, Mother Mariah Langston, and their two kids, 10-year-old Kaya and 15-year-old Ezra, had planned a day of surfing around the beaches of Islamorada, a small island in the Upper Keys. Islamorada has long been a favorite vacation spot for both locals and visitors. It is well known for its clear waters and colorful coral reefs. However, the delicate balance of nature had begun to shift in recent years, and the Langstons were unaware of the growing number of predators lurking beneath the waves. The Keys have always been home to various shark species, but the blacktip population has surged recently. Marine biologists say the amount of prey available has decreased, especially for smaller fish overfished or chased away by warming waters. Because of this, the swift and agile blacktip sharks have become more aggressive in their search for food, coming closer to the coast and mistaking anything that moves for food. The Langston family was about to enter this new, perilous reality on that fateful day, unintentionally. They arrived at the beach just after noon with surfboards strapped to the roof of their aging van. A light wind rustled the palm trees and the sky was clear, with only a few stray clouds drifting in from the horizon. It looked like a calm day for surfing, with waves rolling in. The family set up their towels and umbrellas before Cyrus, a former lifeguard, felt comfortable in the water. As usual, Kaya was the most enthusiastic member of the group and was the first to paddle out. Her petite frame vanished into the distance as she chased the ideal wave. Ezra trailed closely behind, trying to outdo his younger sister due to his competitive teenage nature. Mariah and Cyrus remained closer to the coast, content to observe their kids from afar. Cyrus, although protective, had faith in his family's skills, but Mariah was watchful and constantly kept a close eye on them. She did not see any cause for concern as they had surfed these waters numerous times previously. However, that day a difference went deeper than the surface. The splashing and moving of fish and the surfers themselves had attracted a group of blacktip sharks about 6 in number. Attracted by the vibrations of the board slicing through the water, the sharks, which ranged in length from 4 to 6 feet, circled slowly. The Langstons' shadows on their boards looked like the fish they had been hunting for years. The family laughed and yelled in the distance as they rode the waves, blissfully unaware. Kaya realized something wasn't right when a sudden bump against her board startled her as she paddled back out after catching a wave. She first saw a dark, sleek shape slicing through the water directly beneath her. At first, she thought it was the current or a piece of driftwood. Seeing the dorsal fin's menacing presence made her heart skip a beat. Her tiny hands gripped the edges of her surfboard, and she froze, not knowing what to do. Fear tightened in Ezra's stomach as he saw the fin from a few yards away. Everything appeared to slow down at that precise moment. He had heard tales of shark attacks in these waters, but they had always been far-fetched accounts of other people's experiences. He felt a wave of panic now that he was facing reality. The surrounding water burst into movement before either of them could respond. Perhaps thinking Kaya was thrashing a wounded fish with her paddle arms, one of the sharks sprang at her board, its razor-sharp teeth brushing the edge. As the shark circled back for another pass, Kaya screamed and instinctively pulled her legs onto the board, trembling all over her body. Pumped full of adrenaline, Ezra paddled toward his sister and called out to their parents, but the wind and waves muffled his voice. Though they were still unaware of the danger, Cyrus and Mariah could see the commotion from where they were standing. Cyrus did not realize how serious things were until he noticed the dorsal fins poking through the water. Without thinking, he picked up his board and dove into the waves with Mariah behind him. The sharks had picked up their aggression by the time Cyrus arrived. Ezra fell into the water after one knocked on his board, causing him to lose his balance. He felt the shark's razor-sharp skin brush against his leg before he swiftly scrambled back on. The shark had gotten incredibly close. In an attempt to save Kaya, Cyrus arrived before her and pulled her onto his board. While fear took hold of her heart, Mariah yelled at Ezra to keep her composed. The sharks persisted because they could sense their prey was still in reach. Cyrus and Kaya were thrown into the water when a particularly large blacktip charged at his board. There was a brief moment of pandemonium as surfboard sharks and flailing limbs moved violently in the churning water. First to surface, terrified and with wide eyes, Kaya gasped for air. Cyrus took her by the shoulders and held her over the water, using all his strength to kick toward the shore. With his mother only a few feet away, Ezra paddled ferociously, his eyes fixed on the dorsal fins that appeared to be closing in from all sides. As Mariah arrived at his location, a shark suddenly lunged toward Ezra, its jaws snapping shut just inches from his leg. She gave Ezra one last shove, and they paddled as quickly as they could toward the safety of the shallow. The sharks started to retreat as they approached the coast, and the water became shallower. Due to their preference for deeper waters, blacktip sharks became disinterested as the Langston family approached the shore. The family was so shaken and tired from the ordeal that their legs gave out as they staggered onto the sand. With Cyrus holding Kaya tightly and his heart still pounding, Mariah fell to her knees and drew Ezra into her arms. Following the ordeal, the Langstons sat in stunned silence as the shock of what had happened began to set in. They were only spared by their lightning reflexes and unwavering will to live after having been on the verge of death. After being a place of happiness and leisure, the beach suddenly seemed like a battleground full of reminders of how fleeting life can be. In the days that followed, the small town of Isla Mirada saw a rapid spread of news of attacks. Blacktip sharks were becoming more common in the area, so experts were called to assess the situation and issue warnings. The experience profoundly impacted the Langstons. Although they had always respected the ocean, they knew its potential for danger and unpredictability. Even though they would eventually make their way back to the water, they would never forget that day because it was a constant reminder of the precarious balance between humans and the natural world, and the strength of family ties in the face of unfathomable danger. In 2011, there was a lot of excitement in Half Moon Bay, a small coastal town in Northern California. Annual surfing competitions were held at Mavericks, a famous surf spot located approximately 2 miles offshore each winter. The competition attracted competitors from all over the world, all keen to ride the enormous erratic waves that crashed over the shallow reef beneath the chilly Pacific Ocean. With tourism and fishing as its main industries, the town has a long history with the sea. However, no one could have anticipated the chaos unfolding that year, a day when the ocean's predators would turn the competition from thrilling to terrifying. The weather was ideal for the event. The waves were enormous, the wind was constant, and the skies were clear. Competitors vying for the coveted Mavericks title had assembled in their dozens from seasoned pros to up-and-coming amateurs. Among them were well-known individuals like Tessa Cromwell, an emerging talent from Oregon, and Nico Valerius, an Australian surfer with international renown. Local surfers competing for the top spot included Mavericks veteran Jonah Reef Sullivan. Spectators lined the cliffs, watching from a safe distance as the surfers took on the massive swells. It was a smooth start to the competition. Paddling into the deep water, the surfers sliced through the icy surf with their boards. The competitors danced with the waves during the first few heats without major incidents or tumbles. The atmosphere was electric, and each time a surfer made it back to shore on one of the enormous waves, the crowd let out a roar of cheers. However, strange things started to happen as the third heat got underway. Sleek and dark shapes moved beneath the surface, but at first no one noticed. Many species of marine life, such as dolphins, seals, and occasionally sharks, have been reported to reside in the waters off the coast of Northern California. On that particular day, though, no one had ever seen the sharks this close to the beach. The first indication of trouble was when Rajiv Masood, an amateur surfer, abruptly abandoned a wave in the middle of the ride. It appeared to be a typical fall from the cliffs, but Rajiv emerged screaming and flailing wildly. He had been knocked off his board by something powerful, something fast. Unaware of what was happening, the event presenters hurriedly requested a rescue, and the safety jet skis raced to get him out of the water. Rajiv's leg was bleeding from a deep bite mark when he was pulled onto the jet ski. Numerous mako sharks renowned for their extraordinary speed and agility had started to circle the area. Those surfers still in the water began to panic. A startling shove against Nico Valerius's board startled him as he prepared for his next wave. He looked over his shoulder and saw the distinct outline of a mako shark diving beneath him, its pointed, sharp nose slicing through the water like a torpedo. With fear on his face, he paddled fearlessly toward the safety of the jet skis. The competition was halted immediately, but not everyone made it to safety on time. As Tessa Cromwell waited for her turn, she was suddenly encircled by two or more sharks. One of the sharks lunged at her despite her best efforts to stay calm as she paddled frantically toward the shore. It struck her board with such force that it broke in two, sending her plummeting into the water. Before the emergency team could save her, she was bitten on the arm and had to be rescued quickly. They drove back to the beach, leaving a trail of blood in their wake. The scene descended into chaos over the next few minutes. Some surfers were still waiting for waves in the lineup, oblivious to the presence of sharks. Even though the rescue crew was working non-stop to get everyone back to shore, sharks appeared everywhere. Jonah Sullivan had been surfing Mavericks for years and had never seen anything similar. Knowing that a single mistake could endanger his life, he carefully navigated his board while scanning the water. The water appeared alive with movement as he observed the dorsal fins breaking the surface. Surfers were nothing more than prey in the path of the sharks' sleek bodies as they slid through the surf. The event organizers promptly evacuated the water upon recognizing the seriousness of the threat. When the onlookers saw the bloodied surfers being brought ashore, they quickly realized what was going on after being startled by the sudden stop. Word quickly spread that the sharks had arrived, and chaos broke out on the beach. While helicopters hovered overhead scouting the waters for more sharks, paramedics attended to the wounded. Dr. Lyle Everett and other local marine biologists were perplexed by the mako shark's unexpected appearance, so close to shore. Sharks were common in the area but rarely threatened surfers, especially in the winter when the water was colder. After years of studying the marine life in the area, Dr. Everett surmised that the unusually large schools of baitfish may have drawn in the sharks. The frenzy of the competition, with its splashing and movement, likely triggered the sharks' hunting instincts. The incident prompted an immediate investigation. The Coast Wildlife and Fish Department and local oceanic researchers began studying the area to understand what caused the sharks to behave aggressively. Theories ranged from shifting ocean currents and water temperatures to overfishing, disrupting the sharks' natural feeding patterns. But one thing was clear: the waters off Mavericks were no longer as predictable as they once seemed. In the weeks following the attack, the surfers who had survived the ordeal reflected on their experiences. Her arm healing from the bite, Tessa Cromwell vowed to return to Mavericks, though with a new respect for the dangers lurking beneath the waves. Jonah Sullivan, who had narrowly escaped without injury, advocated for increased safety measures at surf competitions, including better monitoring of shark activity. The Mavericks competition would go down in history not for the waves, but for the sharks that came from the depths and turned a day of sport into a fight for survival. The event highlighted the delicate balance between humans and nature, and the need for a deeper understanding of the ocean's mysteries. For those who had been there, it was a day they would never forget, where the line between predator and prey had been blurred, and the ocean had shown its teeth. Guadalupe's surrounding Pacific waters were crystal clear on the morning of September 12, 2024. Situated 150 miles off the coast of Baja California, Mexico, the island has gained a reputation as one of the world's top locations for up-close encounters with great white sharks. Adventurers had been seeking the excitement of coming into contact with these enormous predators from the safety of reinforced metal cages for decades. For such expeditions, the island's rocky cliffs and abundant marine life provided the perfect backdrop. World-famous adventure photographer Mike Hall and his fiancée Sarah Reynolds were on board the Isla Explorer, a special ship built for diving tours on that fateful day. Mike had envisioned the trip as an opportunity to use his camera to document the unadulterated beauty of the ocean's top predator. Reluctantly, Sarah had consented, more because she loved Mike than because she was particularly interested in sharks. She had never been at ease with animals that had too many teeth, and great whites had a reason to make her uneasy. A few tourists and researchers who were all excited to feel the excitement of diving with sharks joined them. The cage diving adventure had started just like any other. 2 strong steel cages, each intended to give divers a secure viewing platform, had been lowered into the water by the Isla Explorer's crew. The great white sharks circled the cages with an odd mixture of curiosity and indifference, attracted by the smell of chum in the water. Mike was at his best with his camera in hand. He skillfully navigated inside the cage and took picture after picture of the sharks as they silently moved through the water. While her heart thumped in her chest, Sarah clung to the side of the cage. Her heartbeat quickened each time one of the sharks approached, reminding herself of the strength of the cage and the innumerable divers who had come back safely from similar experiences. She tried to concentrate on her breathing. However, there was something different about the sharks' movements that day. They seemed more frantic and agitated. Once serene, the water now appeared to be churning with a faint but increasing tension. The biggest shark surfaced from the depths as the hours went by. Over 18 feet long and covered in scars, this enormous great white was a veteran of innumerable underwater combats. As they observed from the boat, the crew recognized it right away. They called it El Matador, and it was a common visitor to these waters, which were renowned for their size and viciousness. The shark moved slowly and deliberately toward the cages, staring at the divers inside with its black eyes. In pursuit of the ideal shot, Mike leaned closer and placed his camera between the bars of the cage. Mike was too preoccupied to notice Sarah cautiously nudging him as her sense of dread grew. He had photographed dangerous animals for his career, so this was another opportunity to get a unique shot. The shark lunged abruptly and unexpectedly. Unlike the others, this method wasn't slow and was curious. With startling force, El Matador pressed its enormous head against the cage, causing the steel bars to groan. Even though Sarah screamed and automatically moved away, Mike didn't move, keeping his camera up to his face. The cage trembled as another even more powerful blow came. The boat's crew let out a shout, but the water and the growing panic below drowned out their voices. The unthinkable occurred in a matter of seconds when the shark's strong jaws clamped down on the bars, bending and twisting them like wire. The cage gave way before anyone could react. As the shark's head poked through the opening and its teeth flashed in the faint underwater light, Sarah's mind froze in fear. Mike didn't have time to get out of the cage because he was stuck against the side. In order to pull him from the cage and into the open water, the shark's jaws closed around him. Sarah found the subsequent scene to be a blur. She recalled the surface screams, the waters rushing, and seeing Mike's body vanish in a cloud of blood. Moments later, the crew dragged her out of the cage, but she was barely conscious, shock numbing her mind. The shark had made its meal, which meant that Mike could not be traced, as the shark had disappeared into the deep. The only thing left was a memory. Sarah was in a daze for days following the attack, unable to comprehend what had transpired. After Mike left, she had been powerless, stuck in a nightmare from which she was unable to escape. Media outlets swooped down on the story like vultures. The shark cage tragedy and the fatal breach were widely reported. Still, none of the stories adequately conveyed the horror Sarah had seen. They made Mike a martyr of adventure, a man who had given his all for his passion. For Sarah, however, the situation was much more nuanced. Not only had something gone terribly wrong with the shark that day, but she also couldn't get rid of the feeling that cage diving as a whole had failed. The world moved on over the next few weeks, but Sarah was unable to. Then she went back to Isla Guadalupe on a chilly October morning. This time she arrived by herself, resolved to face the sea and the memories it evoked. She was instantly identified by the Isla Explorer crew, who expressed their sympathy and advised her not to return to the water. For condolences, Sarah wasn't present, though. She needed to comprehend. In an attempt to piece together what had happened, she spoke with shark experts and marine biologists for hours. According to some theories, the shark may have been startled by the camera lens's reflection and thought it was prey. Some hypothesized that the increased chum in the water had exacerbated the shark's aggression. Sarah wasn't satisfied with any of the explanations, though. She ultimately realized that she might never be able to learn the whole truth. Sarah found a tiny bit of peace while standing on the deck of the Isla Explorer and gazing out at the vast blue ocean. No amount of human meddling could completely control the creatures that lived in the vast and unpredictable sea. In a sense, Mike had been drawn to the ocean, which he had loved. However, neither she nor the shark were at fault. When they entered its domain, they both accepted the risk. Sarah felt lighter as the boat resumed its journey to the mainland. Although the guilt had started to lessen, the grief would never go away. She had confronted her fears and the ocean, and while she didn't have all the answers, she had enough to continue. Tranquil yet luxurious North Ari Atoll located in the Maldives. The sun set over crystal-clear waters that stretched out endlessly into the horizon. It was a resort island, secluded and exclusive, where wealthy honeymooners and vacationers from around the globe came to escape the monotony of life. The island known as Kuramathi Isle was a stunning blend of white sands and lush palm trees, surrounded by vivid coral reefs and teeming marine life. Ava Harper, an American tourist in her mid-30s, had arrived at Kuramathi Isle with her sister Meryl for a much-needed vacation. Ava had insisted that they travel to avoid the stress of their everyday lives in Chicago after Meryl's recent tumultuous divorce. With its tropical setting, seclusion, and tranquility, Kuramathi seemed ideal for that. World-class facilities were available at the resort, and the staff was incredibly helpful. Everything had gone according to plan during the first few days. But then there was a tragedy. One of the things Ava would never forget happened on the fourth day of their visit. Just off the beach in one of the resort's designated safe zones, a honeymooning couple named Jared and Alara Voss had been snorkeling. The water glistened beneath the sun's golden rays as it rose. Ava had been half asleep in a beach chair when she heard the frantic splashing. Squinting at the water, she sat up and noticed Jared flailing wildly. Ilara, his wife, was yelling. Ava glimpsed a dark and ominous object amid the confusion. A shark, its dorsal fin clearly visible, tearing through the water at a terrifying pace. The water surrounding Jared turned red a short while later. It happened very quickly. Although it was already too late, resort employees hurried to remove Alara from the water and try to save Jared. The pristine beach was now marred by blood where his body had been dragged beneath. Tourists stood motionless on the beach, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed as shock swept through the air. The resort's management moved swiftly, but not in the manner one might anticipate. Citing routine maintenance and asserting that Jared had disregarded safety precautions by going too far out into the open ocean, they closed off the beach rather than publicly confronting the attack. The resort manager, a calm man named Elias Nevin, blamed Jared for his own negligence and declared it a tragic accident, which Ava overheard. The other guests were even led to believe that it might have been a freak accident that had nothing to do with a shark, possibly a simple slip on some jagged coral. However, Ava was aware of her observations. Without mentioning Jared's passing, the beach reopened the following day. It was not a monument, and there was no recognition. Ilara's cries of sorrow had been muffled behind closed doors, as she was also discreetly taken off the island. Ava felt uneasy about the entire circumstance. She was greatly satisfied with her ability to see things clearly, but she couldn't get rid of the feeling that this wasn't the first time something similar had occurred. Meryl was at the resort's spa later that night, so Ava sneaked into the lobby to do some research. In its brochures and website, the resort boasted about the safety of its waters, strongly suggesting that shark sightings were uncommon and that the area was closely watched. However, Ava rejected it. She began making inquiries informally with the bartenders, the employees, and even some locals she had met while on a trip to a nearby island. Regarding the incident, everyone appeared uncomfortably silent. Ava does not start to piece together the truth until she meets a local fisherman named Dune. Kuramathi Isle had a dark past. Dune, a middle-aged man with deep-set eyes who spoke of experience, told her in low voices. A number of people have vanished over the years, primarily tourists who have gone diving or snorkeling in the nearby waters. The resort had always been able to hide it by blaming the victims themselves, claiming that they drowned or claiming that accidents were to blame. The shark population near the island has become abnormally aggressive in the past 10 years, Dune said, possibly as a result of illegal fishing methods that have upset the ecosystem. However, the resort refused to admit the issue because it was keen to keep up its image as a honeymooners' and vacationers' paradise. They instead silently compensated the bereaved families and removed all mention of the incidents from the public domain. Ava's spine tingled. Stopping now was not an option, even though she knew she was on a dangerous path. She resolved to confront Elias Nevin and uncover the cover-up, so she went back to the resort. But she quickly became aware that someone was observing her. Everywhere she went, resort employees appeared, and her room had been inexplicably broken into while she was away. This disturbed Ava, but it strengthened her determination. Ava chose to take a boat out to the deeper waters where Jared had been attacked the following day. She was curious to find out if the area was unique. Concerned for her sister's safety, Meryl pleaded with Ava to stop, but she persisted. To get away from the resort and be alone, she hired Dune to take her to the reef. The unusual scarcity of fish, as though the region had been abandoned by smaller marine life, caught Ava's attention as they circled the waters. Dune clarified that this was an indication that predators were close by. Ava suddenly noticed a big shadow beneath the boat, a shark. Before vanishing into the abyss, it made 2 full circles around them. Dune insisted that they return because he had had enough. However, Ava witnessed what she had to do. The resort was aware that the waters surrounding Kuramathi Island were unsafe. Ava went back to the island and stood up to Elias. She claimed that in order to safeguard the resort's earnings, he concealed the shark attacks, endangering more lives. Elias, who remained composed and calm, acknowledged it. Rather, he cautioned her that bringing such charges to light would destroy not only the resort, but also her. According to his implication, Ava wouldn't be the first to disappear if she put in too much effort, and the resort had strong connections. Ava sent an anonymous tip to a major news outlet before leaving the island that evening, with Meryl after realizing how dangerous she was. In the weeks that followed, the cover-up at Kuramathi Isle was revealed by an investigative report broadcast on international television. The resort experienced severe criticism lawsuits from relatives of the victims and a steep drop in visitors. Following Elias Nevins's disappearance, the Maldivian government opened a formal investigation into the resort's operations. Ava's life was forever altered by what she had discovered, and she returned to Chicago. She had traveled to the Maldives in search of tranquility, but instead she had discovered a fatal secret that had claimed lives. The paradise that Kuramathi Isle had promised was merely a front for the perils that were hiding beneath it. And Ava would always remember that there is a cost to paradise.